Hey, this is Jim Feist and Tommy Canale in Las Vegas, and we're going to talk a little bit about everything. We're going to talk about the Dom DeMarco show that we do every week. We're going to talk about the NCAA, maybe a little NFL. And then finally, we're going to talk about a very important thing that's happening. It's a book release that Tommy wrote about the night the music died in 1959. Now, I'm the only one on this video that remembers that day. That means that I'm older. Not necessarily wiser, but older.
More experienced.
More experienced. Vintage. I'm vintage. Tommy, good morning.
Hey, Jim, how are you? It's great to be with you.
Good to do this. We saw you yesterday, had a little lunch. We had some fun. Tommy, we're going to do the pizza show. We call it the pizza show for short. It's a Dom DeMarco's Jim Feist handicapping show. It's done on West Charleston in Las Vegas. Dom DeMarco's owned by Albert Scalliot. It's a great restaurant. The food is fantastic. And Albert has these specials where the prices are ridiculous. I think he has a 2 to 6 happy hour every day that you can't even get a seat. And the prices are ridiculously cheap. He cuts everything in half price-wise. And then every Wednesday we do the show live in the restaurant, in the patio. And Tommy is the host. And I'm sitting right next to him, although we're going to have to fight for that position because I really don't want to sit next to him. But we had fun talking about that yesterday. Tommy, let's talk about that show. We have the best, I'm going to say handicappers, but handicappers is a broad term. Football handicappers, but there's very few people in this world that actually know how to bet and win. The betting part, everybody knows how to make a bet. The winning part, only about 3% of all bettors actually make a profit over a long period of time because they really don't know what they're doing in many different ways. The people on this show, I'd say 97% of them are consistent winners, which makes it an unusual show. We call it a handicapping show, but it's a little bit more than that. It's probably, in my opinion, definitely in my opinion, the best handicapping football show in the world because we have winners where other handicapping shows don't have those kind of winners.
I agree with you. And I would go as far as this, Jim, and I've told my friends this, that the NFL show that we do at Dom DeMarco's every Wednesday is second to none, I feel, in 3 different ways. One, you've hit the nail on the head, that we don't bring losers on the show. We only have winners on the show, for one. And for two, I would bet anybody to find a better show with a better list of panelists that come on that show and give away their advice and give away their thoughts and some of their picks for free. And from a third standpoint, I would say it's the most in-depth, detailed show about the NFL, and then we got into NCAA as well. I think second to none. You are not going to find another show that has those 3 components, not to mention if you take all the experience you have. I know you joke around that you're vintage and you're old, but Jim, let's face the facts. If we add up all the years of the people that are on that panel every week, we're probably 100 to 150 years of experience combined, and you're not going to find that.
That is absolutely true. And I can vouch for the fact that these people are winners and we've known them for a long time and they're exceptional. And it's really an honor to have them on the show. Sometimes I sit next to people and I say, man, I never thought I'd meet this guy, and it's pretty incredible what we have going on there. And that is every Wednesday, starting on the 3rd of September. Now, the 3rd of September is a little bit different because Tommy's going to be on a book tour, and he is there with his equipment and his speakers and everything, but he will not be there on the 3rd. So we're going to do the show remotely. I'm going to host it. And we'll have a couple of guests, and the content will be just as good, but it's always going to be online. It will not be live in the studio, in the restaurant. On the 10th of September, Tommy will be back, and from the 10th of September through March Madness, we will be live every Wednesday in that restaurant. And I advise you to come sit there, watch the show. You don't have to buy lunch or anything, but I recommend that you do, because you're not going to be sorry. The food, really. And I go there all the time to eat. I did yesterday. I mean, I might go there 2, 3, 4 times a month just to eat. They have great food. I had salmon yesterday. They have pizza. They have meatballs. It's just everything. All Italian food is an Italian restaurant. And Albert does a fantastic job putting that together. So that's about the show, the Dom DeMarco's show, every Wednesday at Dom DeMarco's in West Charleston here in Las Vegas.
Now, Jim, also on that, before we go on, I want to remind everybody, if you can't get there, you can still watch that show live as we're doing it, because it's going to be here on StreamYard, and we're going to be connecting that to the Dom DeMarco's YouTube channel and to your Facebook channel. So if you're not from Las Vegas or you can't get there, you can watch this show live. And if you miss it live, you can watch it on a replay.
Oh, absolutely. And it's also going to be posted up on jimfeist.com. The main site that will be on an international basis is Proline TV on YouTube. And that's tremendous volume there. So that's one of the places. We have Instagram, we've got TikTok, we've got X, we got Facebook, and they're all posted up live. So you can watch, and you can watch replays as well. When we were sitting at lunch yesterday, now, I don't know too much about your background, but I know that you were in the coaching business for a long time. You know sports, and I believe you know basketball mostly, because I think you were a basketball coach.
Correct. Yeah.
And I know some people have actually asked you to go back into coaching, but you said you're not going to do that. But you know a little bit about the NCAA. You know a little bit about NIL. And let me just – I'm just going to delay that. Always have some interruptions. So you know a little bit about the portal, the NIL, what the NCAA is doing. Would you mind sharing some of that with the listeners?
Sure. Just to kind of bring you and the listeners up to speed, I was the athletic director and head men's basketball coach at Illinois Valley Community College for 7 years. And 5 years prior to that, I was the assistant AD and assistant basketball coach. So I was there for a dozen years and got to know quite a few coaches in the business that have now moved up the ranks and are in the Division I level. Knew some Division I coaches there, and have always stayed relevant with basketball. Outside of all the other things I do, I'm the National Scout Director for Recruit Look, and I help high school kids get college scholarships. So I'm really on the streets running with what's going on. But with the NIL, with the antitrust, until something happens in the courts, which I don't see anything happening soon, there's no cap. So this NIL is out of control. There was a new thing that came into July 1st that's separate from national name, image, and likeness, which is the Power 5 schools, including Notre Dame, had no choice. They had to opt in. And the remainder of the Division I schools had a chance to opt in if they'd like to. The majority did. Now, the Ivy League and the Patriot League opted out. So they are not part of what I'm about to explain. And what this new thing says is that the roster limits, depending on each individual sport, have increased. So, for instance, like for football, you're looking at, I think it's 105 are going to be, they can go up to on a sideline. But they've taken away some of the other things. Like a year ago, there's no more national letter of intent. There's nothing to bind a student athlete to a school. They can pretty much leave whenever they want. But they added this $20.5 million cap to each individual Division I school that they can pay their athletes that started July 1st. Now that 20.5 can't go any higher, and it's for all sports combined. Now let's face the fact, you and I know that 97% of that money is going to go to football and basketball, and the remainder of that 3% is going to dwindle down to all the other sports. So these kids can now get paid directly from the school and pull NIL money on the side. So are we really in a college business, or is this now another level of pro athletes, which I think it is, because we're paying these guys to stay around school. I'm not saying they don't deserve to be paid, but the amount of money that's now come into this is astronomical. And the other thing too is now with all this additional roster spots and all this 20.5 million, the other thing they got is they can now give full rides or partials. So they don't have to give a full ride to everybody like they used to, what they used to call head count sports. It's now everybody can either give a full or a half or even a partial if they want. It's up to those schools and those coaches. But what I think we need to see here, Jim, is, and they started this thing called the CSC, the College Sports Commission, that I think for the next year is just going to be overseeing how NIL and this 20.5 million is working before they start coming in, I think, and making some changes or maybe putting the law of the land down. But something has to be done, because in addition to that, the NCAA is in the process, now they don't do anything quick, of changing the eligibility from 4 years to 5. So
you're saying that they won't graduate for 5 years.
Well, if they graduate in 4, this is where I think the kicker is. Now, I know from when the thing was proposed for legislature to go from 4 years to 5, there was 2 caveats to it. One, it's 5 years with no red shirt. So there's no, like right now you have 5 years to play 4 and you have a red shirt year. They're talking 5 straight. So if you don't get hurt, you play 5. If you get hurt, you only got 4 left. But the other thing they're talking about from the academia side is these athletes, a high percentage of them don't graduate in 4 years, and they need an additional year to graduate. But for me, somebody on the inside, okay, maybe there are some, like in swimming, in volleyball, in golf, and tennis, that have that situation. But your top tier athletes in baseball, basketball, football, and volleyball now that's exploding, and women's basketball starting to explode, and golf, let's face it, they're probably not going to graduate anyway. They're going to stay 5 years and go on the 5-year college plan to earn as much money as they can. Because one of the things and I was part of a convention that was here last December for the college golfers, coaches. And one of the things they're talking about is, hey, these athletes, when they leave us, they can't make the money that they're making now, and they have to go into the real world and make a whole lot less. So they're trying to figure out, how do we send these kids basically out the door to go get a career when they know they're not going to make the money that they're making? We have set kids up now, I think, for failure instead of success.
Wow. That's a lot to take in. I've always been a proponent for these kids to be treated better when they go to school, because they actually make the colleges a lot of money. It may still be a negative, but they bring in a lot of revenue. Mm-hmm. And a lot of schools actually make a lot of money from it. Not so much the non-revenue sports, but the revenue sports, and we know what they are. So now they're getting paid. So it's actually, you're going to college to make money instead of spending a lot of money to go to college, which is what it used to be.
Yeah.
So, but that's only for the athletes that are of the level that would get paid, because not every athlete's going to make money.
No. And you know what, Jim, and I'll give you an example of where recruiting has gone. A good friend of mine who is a Division I assistant coach told me, Tommy, when you were in the junior college level, every year you had to flip your roster, because you would lose half to 70% of your roster because of a 2-year school, and you had to start over. The 4 years always had the luxury of having kids 3, if not 4 years. He said, now all we are is a 4-year junior college, because every year, because of the transfer portal, we have to rebuild the roster and start over. On the second part is, now when we recruit an athlete, it's not, hey, Jim, do you want to come play for me at my school? The conversation start is, how much money is it going to take you to get you to come into my school? And do we have that kind of money to pay you? These kids now don't even really care about where they go. It's about how much money can they make. And I know for a fact, a good friend of mine who's a junior college coach has 2 of his athletes. Well, he's got more than 2, but he's got 2 main guys that are getting big money in NIL. They both left the school they were at, and the school that they're now at They didn't care where they went. They just told their agents, get me the most money you can. And they're playing for the school that paid them the most money.
Wow. Oof. There's a lot of follow-up questions I have on this.
Sure.
That it's a mess.
Oh,
I mean, that's a statement, not a question.
I think there's only one solution. And I talked to you about this yesterday. The Power Fives have said for a long time that they've threatened to break away and make their own entity. And I think they should, because they're the ones that are driving this huge dollar amount is the Power Five conferences, including Notre Dame. And if you want to add like the Atlantic 10 or maybe the Mountain West, that's probably may not go. I wouldn't think they would go. The Pac-12 will definitely go. Let them go and have their own entity and have their own national championships and pay these kids the millions of dollars you want, and leave behind the rest of the Division I schools that could still pay them a little bit of money, but don't have the money to compete with these Power Fives. And now we can revert this back to old days when the small schools and the medium-sized schools have a chance to compete. And let's get back to the times where I was saying, remember in '83 when NC State won the national championship with Jim Valvano, that was held at the Pit in New Mexico. And let's pack these small arenas with these big fan bases of these smaller and medium-sized schools. I think it would be beautiful, and let the big schools go on their own.
Well, I'm not going to, this is ancient history. we all know the movie Hoosiers.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a true story, but it was a lot of literary license in that, how it was put together. But that did happen in 1957. It was that was when schools were split up, was it not? But
yeah.
Then when they combined everything together.
Well, I don't know about. I mean, I wasn't around in '57, but I know that at one time, Jim, there was one division where everybody competed against each other, big versus small.
No matter what size you were.
Yeah,
you were all in the same.
And then they broke it up into different divisions based on school size.
So what you're saying is we're going to go back to a former structure.
I think we could get there if we let them break away and go their own way. Because if not, the schools with the money are going to dictate what happens to everything. And these lower, smaller schools, like the low-tier Division I's, they got no shot. And we saw that last year in the NCAA tournament. We talked about it. It was night and day. There was no more Cinderellas, because all the Cinderellas, you looked at the court and you're like, oh my God, it's a night and day difference between the size of the player and the physicality. They didn't have a chance anymore. They don't have the bodies, they don't have the athletes to go as deep as these schools that have the money to. And we're going to see the same thing. It's going to be a lot of chalk because they're going to dictate the money.
There could be a lot of chalk, or they'll just the bookmakers will get smart enough and they raise the prices so high it won't. They'll win, but they won't cover. I'm going to transition into something that's non-sports, but it's very interesting. Like I said, in 1959, I think it was February 1959, there was an airplane crash that killed 3 prominent music people, and they all died. And they called it the night the music died. Now, I'm going to ask you, because you weren't alive then. I was, but I didn't write this book. You did. And you call this book Shadows Over Clear Lake. First of all, there it is. There's the book. A, why is it Clear Lake? B, how did you get interested in this, being that you were not alive when that happened? And you uncovered a lot of things that a lot of people didn't know about it until you wrote the book. And then there was the American Pie with the music, and then there was the side little comment that I read about was Waylon Jennings and the thing that he said to Buddy Holly before the plane took off, which I guess really bothered him, and maybe you can go into that as well. So let's tell us the story. A, how did you get involved?
So the title Shadows Over Clear Lake. Clear Lake, Iowa is where they last played and where the plane crashed. So that's where the name Clear Lake comes in. The airport they took off from was Mason City, Iowa, which is adjacent to Clear Lake, like 5 miles next to Clear Lake, Iowa. So they took off from Mason City and crashed in Clear Lake, Iowa. And Surf Ballroom is the last place they played at on February 2nd, 1959. The plane took off between 12:55 and 12:58 a.m. on February 3rd, 1959, and crashed somewhere between 1 a.m. and 1:07 a.m. They weren't in the air anymore from 4 to 7 minutes at the max before they crashed. The reason I got involved in this about 3 years ago, my mother and sister and I decided to take a road trip from Vegas and go on vacation. And I love to research, and this book is research driven. I hate to write, but I love to research. And oddly enough, I wrote a book. So we decided to take off, and we went through Utah and Colorado. We were originally going to go from the Red Rocks Amphitheater, which is a beautiful music venue, to Dyersville, Iowa, to visit the Field of Dreams movie site that I had been to before. My mom and sister really wanted to see. Well, prior to taking off, going back to my coaching days, Jim, I played in a tournament at Mason City, Iowa, at North Iowa Community College years ago. And I had to take my own car because the bus we had only had so many seats and we were one over. So I just told everybody, you go and I'll follow in my own car. But on the way home, I saw a sign that said something about the Buddy Holly crash site. And I was like, I wonder where that's at. Well, it was freezing cold and I wasn't getting out of my car at that time. I had no desire, but I drove past a pair of glasses. So I knew that there was these Buddy Holly glasses at the entrance of this memorial site. So as we're deciding to go to Dyersville, I'm like, you know what? I wonder where that Mason City is. And I look up and it's an hour and 10 minutes down the road. Talked to my mom and sister and said, let's stop. And my mom, being from the era that you're at, said she would love to see it. So we go to the memorial site first. And when I got there, there was some sort of like vibe to being at the crash site that had this memorial set up for it. And I couldn't explain the vibe, but I thought, man, this is a really part of American rock and roll history that we lost Buddy Holly, Richie Valens, and the Big Bopper. From there, we drove the 5 miles down the road to the Surf Ballroom, and the Surf Ballroom is left as it was in 59. When we pulled up to the front, Jim, it still has the old, do you remember the half oval glass ticket booth that you would go into in the front?
Yeah, sure.
It's still there. And then you walk in and it's like walking into a time capsule. And my mom and sister went one way and I went another. And I just could not wrap my brain around that this place is left in this condition. It was so pristine, and all the artifacts they had there and some of the things that they had recovered from the crash site. And sitting in the old booth and looking across the dance floor to the stage, my brain was trying to imagine what it would have been like to be there in 59. So after that, I had a podcast called Before the Lights, and I did a podcast on it called The Last Dance Party. And Jim, that show kept showing up either 1, 2, or 3 in my analytics every month for well over a year and a half. And I thought, if people are so interested in this show, I'll give them a follow-up. And because I had more research. So I decided to start getting into the research, and I sat down, and before I knew it, I was writing a book. And that's how the whole book came about. And then when I decided to write the book, I really started diving in. I met with Sherry Holly, who is Buddy Holly's niece, who's still alive. I met with Connie Valens and Irma Valens and Bob Morales, who are the younger brothers and sisters to Richie Valens. I met with George Thorogood, who had a connection to the La Bamba movie. I talked to the gentleman who's 91 years old, who was the last living guy who was on the scene that morning, who wrote the story for the Globe Gazette. And I started to understand more about the magnitude of the story, and then all the stuff leading up to getting on the plane, what could have happened up in the air. It is a fantastic story that continues to resonate. And as I said yesterday, I knew there was interest, but I'm grateful there's more interest than I thought.
Well, the good thing is that you wrote it now, and some of the people, I mean, you're talking about most of the people that were around then were 75 or higher in age right now. So there's been a lot of people pass away.
Yes.
At least, I mean, but the interest, it's still a historic event. Who were the people on the plane that died that day?
The pilot was Roger Peterson. He was 21. Buddy Holly was 22. The Big Bopper was 28. And Richie Valens was just 17 years old.
Now, what happened before this? I found it interesting that some of the people that were on this tour took a bus.
Yes, they all took a bus.
Except for the three.
No. They were on the bus tour. This tour started in January 23rd in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and zigzagged all over the upper Midwest in a terrible winter storm. I mean, we're talking sometimes in roads in 59 that weren't really even complete that we have today, in old school buses with no heat and temperatures at minus 30 below zero. They were laying on top of each other to get warm. They were lighting newspapers on fire to get warm. They had a couple buses break down. And it got to the point where they hadn't done their laundry. The bus had an odor to it because there was garbage on it. These were kids put on a bus that was supposed to have a tour manager assistant that went with them. But because it was so bad, he bailed after about the first week. He was gone. So he left all these kids basically on this bus. And Buddy got to the point where he just wanted to get a good night's sleep and do some laundry. And he wanted to get out of this damn bus. In Fort Dodge, Iowa, about 3 nights before Clear Lake, he asked if somebody could charter a plane to the next location. And a guy agreed and then quickly backpedaled and said, no. I don't want to take a plane up in the upper Midwest in darkness and in this weather. It's not a good idea. Well, 3 days later, after the bus broke down, they had to cancel the show. Buddy had it. He went to Carol Anderson, who was the manager of the Surf Ballroom, and said, get me a plane to Moorhead, Minnesota. That was where they were next going. The bus was going to go to Moorhead. Well, they found out that next to Moorhead is Fargo, North Dakota, and they could fly there. So Carol Anderson got a hold of Jerry Dwyer, her own Dwyer Flying Services, to charter this plane from Clear Lake or from Mason City to Fargo. And they were going to get there, 2-hour flight, do their laundry, get a good night's sleep. The bus was going to take 10.5 hours to get there, and they'd be ready to go for the next night. That was the plan.
Wow. There was a convergence of a lot of very bad elements that went into this. The frozen buses, the manager quitting, the not getting any sleep. It was 59. The United States was a lot different. We didn't have the things that we have today.
Not to mention the plane took off in blinding snow and blowing snow. It
probably should have never taken off. No,
there's no question about it. The plane should have never been in the air. And I put this in the book. I still feel this strongly. A 10.5, let's picture this. They didn't leave till almost 1 o'clock in the morning, which is when the bus was going to take off. So they had a 10.5 hour ride. If they wanted to get their laundry done and get a good night's sleep, but the weather wasn't good, I don't understand why did they not stay in Clear Lake, sleep there, get some food, do their laundry, get up in the morning after the storm had passed, got in the plane. They still would have beat the bus to Moorhead, Minnesota.
It would have been a much better idea, of course. Now,
I can't wrap my brain around it, but it didn't happen, obviously.
Obviously did not happen. Well, this is an amazing story. I can't wait to read the book myself. And I'm sure the people out there, there's a lot of people out there listening to this that will be interested. Even younger people would be interested in this because it is in the music industry, and obviously the music did not die. It died for those three. And let's tell a little story about Buddy Holly and Waylon Jennings.
So originally on the plane, if you watch the movie La Bamba or the Buddy Holly story, which is highly inaccurate, there's a misconception that there was a coin flip between Waylon Jennings and Richie Valens for the last seat. That did not happen. What was originally supposed to be on that plane was the pilot, Buddy, Waylon Jennings, who was playing bassist, and Tommy Alsop, who was the guitarist, because the Crickets had broken up away from Buddy at that time. So it started with the Big Bopper and Richie Valens were both not feeling well. The Bopper was more sick than Richie. He really had the flu. He went to Waylon and said, "Can I have your seat?" And Waylon said, "If it's okay with Buddy, it's okay with me." So Bopper tells Buddy. Buddy goes back to Waylon and said, "Are you good with this?" And he said, "Yeah." So Buddy jokingly, knowing how the buses were, said to Waylon, "Well, I hope your old bus freezes up tonight." And Waylon replied back, said, "Well, I hope your old plane crashes tonight."
Oh, boy.
And when he found out that that's what happened, it ripped Waylon apart for years. I mean, years later, he finally admitted to that. A lot of PTSD, a lot of guilt. He turned to alcohol. He turned to drugs for a while. He had a hard time coping with that statement and then that actually happening.
Wow.
And then Richie Valens was signing autographs outside the dressing room. And Tommy Allsop went to make a last check of the dressing room, make sure they had everything. And Richie, he was afraid to fly due to another incident that's in the book. He said to Tommy Allsop, "Are you going to let me fly?" And Allsop reached his pocket, had a 50-cent piece and said, "Call it." And he flipped it in the air. He was at the surf. And Richie said heads and won the toss.
Too bad. I mean, that was a bad win. That's super interesting. I'm very interested in it. I remember when it happened, but that was back in the day when there was no social media, so it took several days to find out. It was in the newspaper. And I remember that. I was 16 years old at the time, I think. Something like that. Yeah, I think 16. And but that's great. How does everybody get a hold of this book?
Two ways. You can get it on Amazon. It's available on Amazon if you just type up Shadows Over Clear Lake. You can get it there. Or if you want an autographed copy, you can go to my website, tommycanale.com, and there's a link there for Shadows Over Clear Lake, and you can order an autographed copy from me, and I'll ship it directly to them.
Okay. Well, thank you for this, Tommy. This was great to do this, and I think the people are going to find it very interesting, not only the comments that we had earlier, but about this book. And have a great weekend or week. It's still only Tuesday. I shouldn't be talking about the weekend.
And I'm going to see you on the 10th. I'm going to see you September 10th back at Down
right.
Marcos.
Enjoy your travels between now and then, and we'll talk soon. Thank you.
Sounds good, Jim. Thank you.